Sisko still has his German lederhosen hat. Quark feeds a Vulcan jumbo Romulan mollusks. And Jake and Nog are watching the women coming off the Bajoran transport at Docking Bay 1. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, everybody.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine Season 2, Episode 20, the Maquis Part 1, which is when it really starts getting good. How are you, Cirroc?
I'm doing all right. That's a nice shirt you got on there. What is that, Romulan ale you're drinking on?
Yeah. A little bit of it. Well, it's kind of goes...
Illegal since
it goes
when?
on forever. Since the 2280s. Yeah. So, did you catch that mention of Jake and Nog checking out the Bajoran women at Docking Bay 1?
Yes, on the Docking Bay 1.
Nice. Otis Redding over here, ladies and gentlemen.
Otis Redding, yes. Thank you.
One of the best, most beautiful songs of all time. Good knowledge.
Absolutely. But yeah, I caught that notice and actually wrote down one of your catchphrase coined terms, the non-appearance mention.
Yes, it was a double this time. You're right.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I actually wrote down Nam. Comes out to Nam, right?
Back at Nam.
I fought Nam. But yeah, so I wrote that down. I was like, okay. At first, I thought I was going to actually be in this episode because when Sisko walks into the quarters, he's like, Jake.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting to see myself, so I was kind of okay. So I guess it is an appearance mention because I'm actually in it. But no, It turned out it was a non-appearance, and my dad goes and checks up on me. He's like, all right, I don't trust you. Dukat, let me find out. Where's my son? Turns out
I thought that was a really nice touch because he wasn't just like, well, I don't trust you. Or like it actually showed him while they're having the conversation, checking in, calling Kira to find him. Although I did wonder, can't Sisko just be like, computer, locate Jake?
That's what I was thinking.
Instead, he's like, nah, Kira, go locate Jake. She's like, okay. I mean, I can ask the question just like you can. But then when she does say, oh, Jake and Nog, they're watching the Bajoran women coming out of the transport Docking Bay 1, she kind of gets stern. She goes, do you want me to have him sent to you? Like she thinks he's in trouble. She thinks you're in trouble there, man.
I know. And, I thought about why he would call Kira too, because I thought the same thing. Wouldn't he just be able to either just contact me directly and say, Jake, where are you? And then I'd say, hey, Dad, I'm over here. Something like that, where he could have had a direct comm to me. He could have asked the computer directly, where am I? But instead, he went to go ask Kira, and I actually had a thought about that. The way they wrote it into the scene, Dukat, I think, fears that Sisko is turning him in, right? You're not supposed to be on the ship. How'd you get in here? You snuck into my quarters.
Right.
And I think the Kira part, the way they wrote the line, which I thought was clever, was almost like, I'm about to tell on you. And I'm going to tell on you to the person that you hate the most, right? The Bajoran who's been fighting you for her whole life. So somebody you know very well, right? So I think that was part of the reason. Because he actually looks over and gives a look over to Sisko like, hey, don't turn me in, let's talk. I came here to talk to you. Then Sisko gives him the look like, I'm not calling to turn you in. I'm calling to find out where my son is. Because I don't trust you.
Yeah. So we get non-appearance mentions from Jake and Nog, and we get a surprise appearance from Dukat. But before we get into Dukat too much, because he had some great moments, just to finish up on the Jake and Nog thing, this happens pretty often. We talk about it where even if we don't see you guys, not only do they mention you, but they also give details about what you're doing. Like Jake is studying this thing with that lady, or Nog is getting into trouble with this, or Jake and Nog are over on the promenade checking out the Bajoran women. So it's not just a mention, but it's continued storytelling. So even if we don't see your face, the story arc of Jake and Nog and the ballad of Jake and Nog lives on in every episode. And I think that's just so cool. And he also mentioned to you when Cal Hudson, shows up.
Right.
We're going to talk about a lot. Bernie Casey, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's one of my favorite characters. That two-part, two off characters in Deep Space Nine, and you'll see why. But yeah, he mentions Jake Sisko when he's first talking to him. He says, "How's
Right.
Jake doing?" and all that. Really good moments. So we already kind of scribbled down the Jake gets a NAM there, but then it was expanded upon later.
Yeah, and I guess somebody who's always going to get a NAM is Curzon, right? Because he's never going to really appear, but he does get mentions a lot, and we never really point
Wow.
that.
You're
We never
so right. We should totally have been, because
counting it. Yeah.
we do see him once in one of the first season episodes. If you remember, when it just shows the old man getting the trill taken out of him and put
Right.
into Dax. But other than that, you're right. It's all NAMs for him. It's like 40 NAMs.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this episode also had a Curzon NAM, which was, uh, the kind of really good exchange that they had with Commander Hudson and Sisko, talking about their past exchanges. He's like, basically, that's one of the guys over there that looks like a hot chick in the front, and
Right.
and he knows all my dirt and all my stories, all my locker room stories. How awkward is that for you? And so I like that little conversation too. It showed their history going back, and kind of the position that Cisco's in, having to have to deal with Dax in these kinds of ways, right?
Yeah, right. I believe the exact quote he says is, "That woman knows more about me than any other woman ever has." And he
Yeah,
didn't say it in a good way, right? He's just like,
yeah,
"Yeesh."
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
Cisco's kind of like, "Don't worry, she's cool,
uh,
man. She's
she's
cool."
cool. Don't worry about. And then they laughed when he was like, "You're not sleeping with her." I think there was something to that effect, right?
Yeah. He's like, "You guys aren't." And he's like,
Yeah.
"No, no, no,
And
no,
they
no."
both start laughing like, that would be weird. That would be
Yeah.
totally weird.
And then and then they both stop and they're like, "But maybe."
But maybe.
No, that.
Then the scene. I mean, the whole show opens. Not to get too far away, but it does open with the kind of banter between Dax and Kira. Right? They're
Mhm.
talking. They're talking boyfriend or dating stories, or sharing their own girl talk. Right?
Right. And that was kind of like a two-part feeling for me. Number one is, it's always fun and interesting to see the interplay between two characters, and especially when they're talking about a guy with a brain twice the size of a regular one and a transparent skull and
Yeah,
all the
size matters clearly.
uh-oh. But then also that they it didn't pass that Bechdel test. That Bechdel test that they were talking about, that we were talking about in the past when we had the ladies episode, clearly doesn't, because that basically covers almost the whole thing. They're almost only strictly talking about a dude or their dating life, and I was like, okay, that's when you're dating yourself as a '90s show, is when that's
Right.
the
Right.
only thing there. But at least it was fun. It was interesting. It mentioned what the alien Gallimites have transparent skulls.
Have we seen those Gallimites in any episodes?
I don't think so. I could be
Okay.
wrong, and I'd love to know that I'm wrong in the comments below, and people would love to tell me I'm wrong. So we welcome it.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing something with a giant transparent head. And then, of course, Kira does the last blow where she says, "Well, I'm not the one that dates Ferengis."
Yeah. Yeah. She threw that in there.
Mm.
The other line I like that Kira dropped was, Dex says to her, "He's got a brain twice the size of yours or mine." She's like, "I know, I've seen it."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
at least it's fun banter, and we enjoy it, and it gives us.
it's fun, but it is a little dated because it's a little bit too, I guess, stereotype of what a girl talk would be, right? But they carried it well, and like you said, it just shows us that conversations are happening on the station that are not just how much energy does the photons have, or what kind of power is the shields running on right now. So they're having other conversations besides just work related stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what's good about seeing the characters kind of interact and have these kinds of moments between each other.
They also mentioned, like the first thing that they mentioned practically was one of my favorite aliens. And this is where my nerdiness shows, because you're a nerd if you have favorite aliens. But they mention we have an incoming Bolian vessel, and I love Bolians. Bolians are one of my favorites. They're the blue guys with the bisecting thing, like what Mr. Mott the Barber was in that thing that mentioned in Picard. Another one was also mentioned in this episode, like my two of my top three favorite aliens, Bolians, and another one that was mentioned was Uridians. And Uridians, I feel like I saw them more Next Generation. They're the guys that kind of look like they have really wrinkled up prune faces, and they are information smugglers. And
now, what the Uridians? That was the Vulcan character talking with Quark. Is that who mentioned the?
Yeah, right,
Uridians?
exactly. And they were like the go between. Let me see, where was it? They were the go between Cardassians giving Bajoran troops weapons, but the go-betweens was the Bajoran extremists, but the go-between was the Uridians. They're like smugglers. So that was cool. It says Sisko that says we caught Cardassians shipping weapons to Bajoran extremists through a third party, the Uridians. They were also prominently featured. One was in a Next Generation episode, The Gambit Part 1 in the 7th season, one of my favorite episodes. And it was played by James Cromwell. And I love James Cromwell, and he played it really well. Anyway, we're getting off track, but those are two of my favorite aliens, because I'm a big nerd.
The Uridians and the Bolians.
Bolians, yeah. And so they just got mentions once, so did Galamites, but who cares about Galamites?
Yeah, who cares about Galamites?
We never seen one before. What do we care? So anyway, moving forward, Bernie Casey shows up as Cal Hudson. This is something that I've been told a few times by a few different people, is that people love to notice and poke fun at where Cal Hudson wears his comm badge. Apparently it's so far over to the side that
yeah.
Did you notice that?
Well, you know what I noticed? Because he actually has really broad shoulders.
Right.
And I noticed how the uniform was fitting on his shoulders. Like, it was, it was far apart. So I noticed that his shoulders were really wide. And I was trying to maybe attribute that to the location of the comm badge. But I did notice that he was having a hard time. It's a bit inside out.
Maybe he just has. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just super broad shoulders, so anything looks farther out. Maybe that's all it is.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's really far out. I don't know. It wasn't too bad. I think maybe
it wasn't too bad, but I noticed him doing the same thing that most people do when they wear those uniforms. There's a tuck. And every time he got up, he would do his tucking and from seated position and stand up and tuck. And that's not just something that's he does. It's something that we see that all people pretty much in those uniforms are doing, right?
Right.
It's not the most comfortable thing to wear. But I think Bernie Casey, it's funny because when I saw him, I said, "Oh wow, he was on our show."
Everybody was, man.
Yeah, so it's always a good thing to see faces that you've seen on other things. I remember Bernie Casey from all type of old movies that I used to watch. One in particular was "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker."
Yep, I knew that one was coming.
Yeah, that was one of my.
I feel like you said "get" though, and not "get."
No, "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker."
Okay, all right.
And it's a cult movie for those of you that don't know. And it was, based in a certain time period. It's got Jim Brown in it. It's produced by the Wayans. I think Keenan Ivory Wayans
Right. That's
is
right.
the
But
lead.
I didn't know Jim Brown was in that. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, Jim
The
Brown's
actual
in it.
football player?
The actual football player, yeah.
Wow. Next thing you know,
Uh,
you're going to tell me O.J. Simpson was in movies.
no, he wasn't
Another
in
running
this
back.
one.
No, I'm just
But there was a lot of good actors in this movie, and it was a comedy, and it's just one of those movies that when you see it, you never forget it. It was just
right.
a real cult classic back in those days. And so when I
Especially just
saw, yeah,
I was just gonna say, especially with just a name like that, a title. It was like early '90s or something like that, I think. And it's just like you
yeah,
get that title, and you're like, okay, I got to see what's going on here. who would who would have the
yeah,
balls to have a title like that? It's just so out of the ordinary, you know.
yeah. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, that's the cat from. I'm gonna get you some. I mean, he's also done, and I looked him up to check out his career. And I mean, he's done the movies with Steven Seagal, Under Siege. He did another 48 Hours with Eddie
Hmm.
Murphy and Nick Nolte. I think he played the police captain in that movie where he
Hmm.
was, pissed off about Eddie Murphy breaking up everything. So he's usually the voice of authority in the roles that he plays. He plays like a voice of authority, a police captain, a commander, an admiral. I also saw that he was on Sequest,
Oh, no
and
way!
yeah, he was on Sequest and Babylon 5.
Wow, a sci-fi guy, huh?
Yeah, so he might be one of the few actors that's at the trifecta of being on Sequest, Babylon 5, and Deep Space Nine.
Right. The only other Star Trek actor I know there are a few Star Trek actors that were on Sequest. The only one I can think of offhand was Richard Hurd, who played Admiral Paris in Voyager.
Mhm.
Um, he was in Sequest, but I don't remember what his character name was. But yeah, I didn't know that about Bernie. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so he's one of the go-to actors during that period in time, and he has a really accomplished resume. But
Hmm.
I thought he did a great job as Commander Calvin Hudson. Um, it's a good thing to see another black man on the screen with Avery and kind of the two of them bouncing off of each other and watching their share these different performances together. I enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, and both of them high ranking, both of them in charge of their respective fields. They are the top of their respective food chains, you know.
Right.
Sisko is the commanding officer on Deep Space Nine and overseeing all of Bajor. Uh, uh, Cal Hudson is overseeing everything that's going on in the demilitarized zone, which has some really cool political stuff. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I thought that was interesting. They called it the demilitarized zone because I guess right now in current headlines, when we hear about the demilitarized zone, we think
sure.
of North Korea, right?
Hmm.
The space between North and South Korea. And I just thought, wow, that's crazy. I know it's a terminology that's been used before North and South Korea, but in our minds now, when you hear it, it instantly kind of activates that because that's most recently the headline, right? But I just thought it was cool that they used this idea of the demilitarized zone and this idea of these factions that are um, under the guise of the Federation and Cardassian. We don't know exactly what's going on right now, but it seems as though they're acting under the banner of Federation and Cardassian, right?
Yeah, right. So it's like a really interesting situation in that Cardassians and Federation were at war together, and then they had a ceasefire. They came to a non-aggression pact or a treaty, and part of that was that they have to create a line that says, okay, let's agree this is Federation space, this is Cardassian space. That's it. We just have to create a line and stop the war. Well, the problem with that is that some of the planets that are in now Federation space were inhabited by Cardassians. And some of the planets that are now in Cardassian space are inhabited by Federation. So obviously, those people on those planets are really unhappy about that because they're like, hey, I settled here. I plowed my land or I built my homes. And now suddenly this planet belongs to Cardassia. That's not what I wanted. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a really interesting situation, and it's something that happens in the real world. When peace treaties happen, sometimes people end up being displaced in a way like that, where they're suddenly in a different country than where they settled in. So it's a really interesting situation to where now you can sympathize with the Maquis. They are terrorists and they are the antagonists of these episodes, but we can understand why they're doing it is because they don't want to be under Cardassian rule.
Yeah, and so we're seeing this thing unfold right now, and it's interesting. We talked a little bit about Gul Dukat, but I really enjoy Mark Alimo and his portrayal of Gul Dukat.
Me too.
I think he does a really fantastic job, and he's very good at playing the balance of being a little bit of an asshole and also being a cool guy.
Right. Well, some people would say a little more than a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I see it's his character is so layered. There's so much depth to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you go back and forth in the same instance of loving and hating in the same scene. So, I thought it was funny when he started to look at the consoles of the little runabout they were on, and he was, yeah, I know how to use this.
He's like, yeah, already. This ship's configuration and technology is years behind our Cardassian ones anyway.
Yeah, so trust me, I know. It's like the phaser button is here. Yeah, I know where the phaser button is. Just let me know when they're ready to go. So I just like the way he goes. It's just really good for that character. He's somebody where you feel like, okay, I have to trust him, even though I don't want to trust him. But I haven't really gotten a reason yet. But I'm looking for one.
Right. Kira just doesn't trust him ever, no matter what.
Well,
but
yeah, and he loves toying with her and making advances. But
so much good stuff there. Hey, we got to run to our break real quick, and then when we get back, I got like a ton of leftover trivioids that I want to go through because there are some good ones here. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the second segment of the Seventh Rule.